So good morning, everybody. Happy 3rd of July, which is just kind of the day before. Sort of like Christmas Eve, it's 4th of July Eve, right? So we're celebrating a little early.
3/4 of July.
3/4 of July, there you go. So it's a new month. I can't believe June is over already. We're into our second half of the year. Pretty amazing how quickly time flies, but if you're having fun, it's all right, right? So it's a new month, so we have a new focus this month. We had a great time with our theme last month, but we're moving on in. Today we're going to begin our time together doing a self-assessment. Now the self-assessment is not to instill guilt or bad feelings about ourselves, and we really don't do any of that here. That's not what we're about. But it's just to kind of give us a chance to take an honest look at ourselves and where we are and get a better idea, because when you know where you are, you can get a better idea of where you want to go, right? So this is free from any guilt or shame or personal pressure. Are you guys all ready for this assessment?
Okay. Go for it.
All right. So, number 1, is the pathway of your life one of struggle? See, it goes from 1 to 5, all the way up to an ongoing experience of God's plentiful universe. So on a scale of 1 to 5, where do you fall in that? Just hold on to that thought. Is it, 1? Is it 5? Somewhere in between.
What's the lowest?
What was 5, the ongoing experience?
Yeah, 5 is the high, 1 is the lowest.
Okay.
Okay, so 1 is the lowest, 5 is the highest. Okay, the second one is your journey through life unsatisfying? That would be at the 1. 2, 3, 4, 5, all the way filled with joy and meaning as you live from Spirit's purpose. Okay. And the final question. Do you feel like you are on a course to nowhere or working in harmony with divine law to consciously create every step of the way? Okay, so do we have our assessment? Good. Whoops, we'll go back to, there we go. All right. Now, I suspect that not everybody is at most of you are not at a 1. I wouldn't think you'd be here, but we may not all be at the 5 level either, right?
Right.
So, but you know that each and every one of you deserves to be at the 5 level, right? That's where we all deserve to be, straight on number 5s. Would you like to score number 5 on all of those? Would you? Good. Wouldn't it be glorious? Wouldn't it be glorious to experience if the pathway of your life was clearly an ongoing, consistent experience of God's plentiful universe? Wouldn't it be a blessing if your journey was filled with joy and meaning as you live from Spirit's purpose? And you could get used to being on a course of consciously creating every step of the way, couldn't you? I would think that this would be a good way to live. So wherever you are in the continuum of these questions, there will be gifts for you this month as we explore a number of deeply spiritual yet highly practical ideas, consistently and regularly walking a pathway of God's plenty, a journey of the joy of Spirit, and a course of conscious creation. And our time together this month has been inspired by 2 books, and one of them pretty recent and one of them is rather old. Of course, old, as we know, is pretty relevant, right? So the first one is May McCarthy's The Path to Wealth, 7 Spiritual Steps for Financial Abundance, and this was just published last year in 2015. And the second one is one of my absolute all-time favorites. And it's interesting because Elliot was just asking me for book names for books on prosperity and abundance. And oh my gosh, aren't there a million of them? And some of the basic ones that are tried and true and proven. And this is one of them, Wallace Wattles. And he wrote The Science of Getting Rich, and it was originally published over 100 years ago in 1910. And another one was John Randolph Price's The 40 Days of Abundance. There are so many really, really good ones, but Wallace Wattles, Think and Grow Rich, yes. Napoleon Hill. So, yeah, Wallace Wattles, this is pretty, and John Randolph Price, yeah. Well, so anyway, you're going to hear some some actual excerpts from these books in the coming month and today as well. So despite the titles of these books, they are not just, and this is important, they're not just about financial abundance. And our time this month is really not just about financial abundance. Although I'm going to throw it out there that I don't think any one of us would mind having a little more financial abundance. We could all use a little more. I think we wouldn't mind having that in our lives. So is that right? Everybody could use just a little more. That would, hey, bring it on. A lot more. Yeah. Let's stop the little more. Let's just say if you're going to bring it on, bring it on. Seriously, the difference between a penny and $1,000 bill. The difference between a penny and $1,000 bill. I mean, it's the, in the mind that created all, there's no difference between the big or small, right? So, but this month our theme, it includes much, much more. It's about creating. It's about creating a life that we love living, because you can have everything, but if you're not happy, if you're not in love with what you're doing, it's not going to mean anything. It's about creating a life in harmony with our divine nature and on being on purpose. And it's about a life by design and not by default. A life by design. I like that. I'm designing my life because I don't want to live it by default. So let's turn to our work today. And I want to begin that work with a story, which is not actually a true story. But I love it nonetheless because it makes the point that I want to get across today. And you might have heard it, but if so, bear with me. So many years ago, there was a merchant named Taylor, and Taylor had a kiosk, like the ones they have in the mall. And from his kiosk, he sold high-quality items, much higher quality than many other people. His prices were slightly higher, but people paid it anyway because the quality was so good. We're all willing to pay a little more if it's a good quality product. He was very successful at his little kiosk, so successful that he had an internal nudge to open an actual store, thinking that a store would be his next level of expression. His friends thought that this was a terrific idea, and they encouraged him to take that bold step, so he did. And he carried the same high-quality merchandise, but now the prices needed to be higher because of the increased overhead. Suddenly, he wasn't doing as well as he'd done with his little kiosk. The customers were slow to come in the store, and those who did come in weren't buying like they used to buy at the kiosk. Taylor got scared. He was upset and even despondent. He was sure that he'd made a dreadful mistake by opening this store. He should have stuck to having his little kiosk. Oh, why? Why did he stretch like this? Has anyone ever felt like this? Anyone ever had that kind of experience where you pushed yourself and then wondered, oh my God, what did I do? You felt like maybe you were ready to take that next step, but then you go to the next level, and when you did, things just didn't quite work out the way you thought. Sometimes they even seemed like they went backwards, right? Anyone this happened to? Okay. Why is that? Why do you think that it went backwards? Well, what can we do when we take that next step but things aren't lining up? We're going to explore the why is that as this month unfolds. And what can we do? We're going to talk about that too. But let's just see what Taylor did. For a while, he wallowed in his fear, and he thought about backtracking by closing the store and maybe not even having a kiosk anymore, just kind of giving up. But then, one day a light bulb went off in his head, and he had an idea. The idea was to take on a partner for his business. He selected a partner who had the perfect ability to complement his skills and his talents. Each morning, Taylor and his partner would sit down and make a list of what needed to be done and who would do it. And then they would set out on their day to accomplish their assigned tasks. At the end of the day, they would review the list together. Soon, business started picking up. And then it picked up even more and even more. In fact, Taylor and his partner became very, very successful. So successful, you may have heard of the store. It's called Lord & Taylor. Okay, so that's not exactly how it got started. Like I said, it wasn't a true story. So if it wasn't a true story, why did I tell you that story? It's because the facts of the story, just because they're not true, there's still a huge lesson in truth in this story. The lesson in truth just so happens to be exactly the same lesson in truth that Mae McCarthy, from her book here, In the Path of Wealth, offers us in order to lead a consciously abundant and fulfilling life. a life that is a life of plenty, a life of joy, a life of conscious creation. And what is that? It is to bring on a partner, and the same partner that Taylor brought on when he was building his store. So she calls that partner your CSO, standing for, what do you think it stands for? What does CSO stand for?
Chief Security Officer.
Chief Spiritual Officer. Your Chief Spiritual Officer. So in her book, she writes, I have been blessed to experience wonderful business opportunities and successes, but I didn't do all the work and planning alone. Others helped me, and more importantly, the all-knowing power of the universe that I call the CSO helped me. This power guided me to do what I needed to do to receive what I wanted. All I had to do was trust the direction and I received and work with the CSO as my partner. As my trust in the universal power matured and I grew in my partnership with the CSO, my success and prosperity increased immensely. The work also became easier because I felt increased peace and happiness. The work didn't seem as burdensome as at times, it even felt like I was actually doing less. Wow. So do you have the CSO as your partner in all that you do in your life? Mm-hmm. Or are you like a lot of people, like Taylor, who called on the universal support and helped only when they were in trouble, only when things weren't working out? So easy to do that. But when things are going well, it's like, yeah. What if instead you cultivated that relationship on an ongoing basis, consciously, consistently, and intentionally? What if you recognized and realized your role in the relationship with the CSO's role, and you did your part and let your CSO do his or hers? So what might those roles be? I mean, let's get clear here. What might those roles be? Your role has 4 parts that we'll dissect over the course of the month, but today is an overview. So 1, decide what you want. That's the first thing to do. Decide what you want. Sometimes that's the hardest thing ever. What do you want? Ernest Holmes writes, consciousness must be conscious of something. What is it you want? Proverbs says, where there is no vision, the people perish. So we got to get clear. We need to have a picture in our mind of what it is we want. Number 2, consciously stay in alignment with what you want. Don't be like the dog in Up. Well, this is what I want, my new master. Oh, squirrel. That's not going to do it. You got to stay consciously in alignment. Do not get distracted. Don't let yourself, wow, I'm going to school for this, but there's this party over here. I'll just go party with these people and take a couple weeks off. No, got to stay on track. Stay focused. Or in Star Wars, stay on target, right? Now, stand guard the portals of your mind, as Emerson told us. And we'll talk more about that in a moment. Number 3, be grateful in advance for it. Be grateful in advance for what it is you are desiring. Sounds like part of our beautiful and powerful spiritual mind treatment or affirmative prayer, doesn't it? When we give thanks for whatever it is we are treating for. Because we know it's already done in the mind of God. We're just accepting it and then anxiously and expectantly looking for it to manifest. Number 4, follow whatever guidance you get along the way. In the Science of Mind, Holmes writes, the practice of the science of mind calls for a willingness to let this inner spirit guide us. Let this inner spirit guide us. So again, decide what you want. Consciously stay in alignment with what you want. Be grateful in advance for it. And follow whatever guidance you get along the way. That is your job. Those 4 things, that is your job. So what is the CSO's job? Everything else. Everything else. I think that's a pretty good deal, isn't it? Wow. We do the 4 things and the CSO takes care of the rest. Creating the path, the opportunities, the resources to bring you the good that you've defined and to provide you with the guidance to get there, one step at a time. When you do your job and let the CSO do its job, which it will always do, with mathematical precision and with no need for interference from you. You don't need to help. You know, remember how the plumber comes and he gives you two prices? It's like, if you let me fix it, but if your husband helps, joins to help, you have to pay more. Yeah, no interference from us. Let the CSO do his job, right? Okay. You will be firmly planted on your pathway to plenty, your journey of the joy of spirit, and a course of conscious creation. So let's turn for a moment now to some wisdom from the other source that I have, the other book that I was talking about, The Science of Getting Rich. And I want to share some thoughts out of it from chapter 4, which relates particularly to the second part of our role, which is to do what? Consciously stay in alignment with what we desire. First, some groundwork that Waddles lays out in chapter 4. He says, there is a thinking stuff from which all things are made, and which, in its original state, permeates, penetrates, and fills the inner spaces of the universe. A thought in this substance produces the thing that is imaged by the thought. We can form things in our thought, and by impressing our thought on this formless substance, can cause the thing we think about to be created. And Dr. Holmes says it in another way. To learn how to think is to learn how to live from our thoughts. Go into a medium. To learn to live for our thoughts, go into a medium which is infinite in its ability to do and to be. By thinking, we can bring into our experience whatsoever we desire, if we think correctly and become a living embodiment of our thoughts. This is not done by holding thoughts, but by knowing the truth. So listen again to the powerful words of Waddles. To think that you think what you want to think is to think truth, regardless of appearances. Everyone has the natural inherent power to think what we want to think, but it requires far more effort to do so than it does to think the thoughts which are suggested by appearances. To think according to appearances is easy. To think truth, regardless of appearances, is laborious and requires the expenditure of more power than any other work we are called upon to perform. There is no labor from which most people shrink as they do from that of sustained and consecutive thought. This is so true. This is especially true when truth is contrary to appearances. To think health when surrounded by the appearance of disease, to think riches when in the midst of appearances of poverty, requires power. But he who acquires this power becomes a mastermind. He can conquer fate. He can have what he wants. What is so important to understand is whatever you see out there is an effect and was created by what you were thinking and what the conscious creation of all, the collective conscious of all people were thinking yesterday. So if you base your thoughts on today of what you're looking at out there, in effect, you're just repeating. You're in the repeat cycle. What you have to do is come up with a new idea, and then you have a new experience the next day, or immediately, depending on how powerful and how many minds are working on that, right? When we make the effort to think truth in the face of conditions that are to the contrary, we unleash the power of our CSO to do its work in our lives, to create the path, the opportunities, the resources to bring us the good that we've defined and to provide us with the guidance to get there, one step at a time. On the other hand, a fearful mindset does not allow any room at all for the CSO to work. When you're afraid, you've blocked. You've blocked spirit. You've blocked the universal power. Fear and doubt create a block in the channel of communication, and when we're not able to hear any directions to guide us and follow that guidance is our fourth role, right? Following that guidance is our fourth role. So if you can't hear it, we're stuck. So in your partnership with your CSO, you have just 4 things to do to walk a pathway of God's plenty, a journey of the joy of spirit, and a course of conscious creation. We've got to, again, decide what it is we want. And sometimes that can be hard. Sometimes we don't know what we want. But I think if we get quiet, we meditate, if we really think about what brings us joy and what brings joy to others, what is our passion, I think that then we can get clear on what it is we want. And when we do that, We can consciously then stay in alignment with what we want, stay on target. Be grateful in advance for it, whatever it is. Be grateful that it's already yours. Just imagine how great it feels to be doing what it is you desire, living the way you want to live. And then number 4, follow whatever guidance you get along the way. Because once you make up your mind, what happens? The universe conspires, rushes in to support you, to bring you everything it is that you desire to bring about that experience. And then you let the CSO do the rest. So this is your charge for the week, to do these 4 things, and then next week we're going to come together with a more definite and specific plan for working in harmony with your CSO. And I will offer you a specific tool to support you in that. So stay tuned for next week, because there's lots more to come. And so it is.